3 months after the memorial flags came down and the casseroles stopped arriving, I took a ride share to the Regal Grand, the downtown Seattle hotel where Matt and I once watched the city glitter like a spilled jewelry box. I told the driver I was fine. People believe you when you say it softly enough. In my purse was a pharmacy bottle that rattled like sleet, a white dress Matt used to love folded under my coat, and a plan as calm and simple as a bedtime prayer. Upstairs, the room was high and glassy and cold. The skyline pressed in, all those windows full of strangers moving on with their lives while mine had gone still the day the ocean took my husband and kept him. I sat on the edge of the bed and poured the tablets into my palm. They looked like polished seeds. I thought about Ava asking when Daddy would come home and about my lie that he was on a trip far away, and about how grief is a hallway with every light burned out. I raised my hand toward my mouth. Then my phone chimed with a small, polite sound. A push notification bloomed on the lock screen as neat as a business card. Welcome, Gold member Matthew Carter. Room 1608 is ready. Enjoy your stay. The words were so ordinary they felt obscene. The bottle slid from my fingers and scattered pills across the carpet. I stared at the name like it might lift itself from the glass and speak. Matt was dead. I had folded his shirts into boxes. I had pressed my cheek to a casket as the honor guard saluted. Yet the hotel welcomed him back like a regular. I stood so fast the bed groaned. My hands were shaking, but not from despair anymore. From doubt. From heat. From the sudden, terrible possibility of a different kind of truth. When people said time would dull the pain, they never mentioned it would sharpen the silence. After Matt's funeral, Seattle became a city of echoes. I could hear him in everything: the squeak of the mailbox lid, the click of the thermostat, the sigh of our old Labrador by the window. Every sound was a ghost rehearsing his absence. I'd stand in the kitchen at night, staring at the refrigerator's pale hum, imagining him walking in barefoot, asking if I'd seen his blue hoodie. But the house was all static now. The local news had turned him into a headline: "Engineer dies saving 2 children from Oregon rip current." His picture, smiling, sunlit, was everywhere. Colleagues called him a hero. The governor's office mailed me a folded flag. At the memorial, a TV reporter stuck a microphone in my face and asked how it felt to be married to a man of such courage. I remember saying nothing, because courage didn't matter anymore. The truth was, I just wanted my husband back, not the myth they'd built around him. I kept everything just as it had been. His shoes lined up at the front door. His mug with the chipped handle beside the sink, the faint scent of his cedar cologne still clinging to the collar of his flannel. I'd bury my face in it some nights until my eyes stung. Ava would toddle into the room, clutching her stuffed rabbit, and ask, "Is Daddy still helping people, Mommy?" I'd nod, swallowing the lie like medicine. "He's helping from far away." She'd smile, satisfied, and run off, her curls bouncing in the dim light. But grief doesn't sleep. It prowls. It breaks into your dreams, rearranges the furniture of your mind. Mine always started with water, the hiss of waves, the brightness of sand, then his hand slipping from mine under a tide I couldn't fight. I'd wake soaked in sweat, convinced I could still taste salt in the air. Mornings came heavy, coffee went cold. The clock didn't move, it just pulsed. After the push notification that night at the Regal Grand, I drove home on autopilot, heart hammering like it was trying to punch its way out. The streets were slick with rain, the city lights smeared in the windshield like melted neon. The message still glowed in my mind, sharp as a wound. "Welcome, Gold member Matthew Carter. Room 1608 is ready." I tried to explain it away. Maybe the system reused names, or maybe his old loyalty card hadn't been deactivated, but my body didn't believe the logic. My gut burned with the kind of dread that lives somewhere below language. When I parked in our driveway, I stayed inside the car, staring at the front porch. It used to feel like home. Now it looked like a movie set after the cameras stopped rolling. Same props, no soul. Inside, I poured the pills back into their bottle, one by one. I caught myself whispering numbers like a prayer. My reflection in the kitchen window was hollow-eyed, ghostly. What if? The 2 words slid through me like cold wind. What if he hadn't drowned? What if everything from the heroic headlines to the condolence checks was a performance? I laughed once, the sound dry and cracked. "That's insane," I said to no one. But insanity was starting to feel like a reasonable explanation for love. I sat down at the table and opened my laptop. Fingers trembling, I logged into Matt's old email account. The company had deactivated it weeks ago. Still, there were fragments cached in the drafts folder. Expense reports, messages to coworkers, half-finished memos. Nothing unusual until I noticed one labeled Room 1608, PDF, created the morning of his supposed death. My throat tightened. I clicked. The file was encrypted, password protected. My heart dropped into my stomach. Matt had never used encryption. Not even for tax documents. The cursor blinked, waiting. I typed Ava, then Elena, then Seattle. Each time, the denial message flashed back, incorrect password. I slammed the laptop shut. The room felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls were listening. The next morning, I visited the marina where they said he'd died. The sky hung low and bruised, gulls slicing through the mist. Fishermen worked quietly along the dock, the smell of diesel and salt thick in the air. The spot where they'd found his empty kayak was marked by a weathered bouquet tied to a railing. I touched the ribbon, now sun-bleached and frayed. You couldn't have survived that, I murmured. No one could. But then again, people have survived worse storms, wars themselves. A young park ranger noticed me and nodded. You family of the hero? I managed a small smile. Yes, wife. He hesitated. Funny thing, he said, squinting toward the open water. A couple months back, a guy came asking about that day. Said he was a journalist. But he didn't have any credentials. Looked a lot like the pictures in the papers. I thought it was weird, didn't think much of it. My pulse slammed. Do you remember what he drove? He shrugged. Black Tacoma, Washington plates. I only remember because it had a broken tail light. I thanked him and walked away before he could see the way my face had gone cold. Matt's old truck had a broken left tail light from a camping trip last summer. That night, sleep didn't come. The hotel message looped behind my eyelids, overlaid with the ranger's voice. I kept picturing Matt alive, somewhere in that room 1608, maybe even laughing. But if he was alive, why hide? Why let us mourn him? By dawn, I'd made a decision. I packed Ava's overnight bag and dropped her off with my mother, saying I had to close out some insurance paperwork. Then I drove straight to the Regal Grand. The building loomed like a glass monolith, its gold signage catching the early Sunday. My reflection in the lobby doors was pale, determined. Inside, everything gleamed marble floors, chandeliers like frozen rain. The scent of lavender cleaner couldn't quite mask the tension crawling up my spine. The clerk, a young man in a navy vest, smiled politely. Welcome to the Regal Grand. How can I help you today? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Last night I received a message from your system about a guest, Matthew Carter. Gold member. Room 1608. I just need to confirm if that's an error. He frowned, typing quickly. The pause stretched. Then he said, our records show the booking was made yesterday afternoon under that name, paid in cash at the counter, check-in confirmed at 6:04 p.m. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Is he still here? I'm afraid I can't disclose guest details, ma'am. Of course. Privacy policy. But the name glowed on his monitor, Matthew Carter, as real and alive as any heartbeat. I thanked him, forcing a smile, and stepped aside. My legs were numb. The elevator chimed nearby, its doors sliding open. For one reckless second, I imagined pressing 16, marching up there, hammering on that door until he answered. But fear froze me. What if it wasn't him? Or worse, what if it was? I walked out into the bright Seattle afternoon, the city humming obliviously around me, and realized I had crossed some invisible line. This wasn't grief anymore. It was investigation. Somewhere between death and betrayal, between love and madness, there was a truth waiting to be found, and I was done being afraid to look for it. The next morning, the city looked almost too calm, like it knew something I didn't. I hadn't slept. My head was a carousel of questions that wouldn't stop spinning. By 8 a.m., I was back in front of the Regal Grand with a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The glass facade threw my reflection back at me, hair tied tight, dark circles like bruises under my eyes, but a kind of purpose that hadn't been there in months. I walked straight to the counter. The same clerk from yesterday recognized me, his polite mask slipping a little. "Ma'am, if you're here about—" "Yes," I cut in. "Room 1608. I just want to return something my husband left." I held up Matt's old loyalty card, which I'd found in the back of a drawer that morning. A white lie, but it worked. The clerk's posture relaxed. "Of course," he said. "Elevators to your left. You'll need this." He slid me a temporary key card without asking for ID, assuming I was the wife of a regular. Maybe grief looked convincing on me. The elevator ride was too quiet. My pulse filled the space, louder than the soft instrumental music piping through the ceiling. I watched the numbers blink upward. 10, 11, 12. Each ding was a heartbeat. At 16, the doors opened with a sigh. The hallway was hushed, carpet thick enough to swallow footsteps. At the far end, gold numbers glinted, 1608. I approached slowly, key card clutched tight. The corridor smelled faintly of cologne, his cologne, or something close enough to make my throat tighten. I raised my hand to knock, hesitated, then pressed my ear to the door. At first, just the hum of the air vent. Then voices. A woman's soft laughter, low and intimate, and then his voice. Matt's. Warm, easy, unmistakable. "You're safe here, baby," he said. "Once she's gone, the rest will fall into place." My blood turned to ice. The door felt hot under my palms. I pressed closer, barely breathing. "She's not going to back down forever," the woman murmured. "She will," Matt replied. "Grief makes people sloppy. The trust will transfer clean once things settle." My vision blurred. I bit my lip until I tasted metal. Every syllable felt like a nail being driven into my chest. The trust. That was my father's inheritance, set aside for Ava. How could they? Suddenly the door latch clicked. I jerked back just in time to see it crack open. A shadow fell across the carpet, and before I could move, a man's voice, not Matt's, deeper, unfamiliar, said behind me, "Ma'am, you can't be up here." A security guard. Big, bald, expressionless. His badge caught the light. I was just, "Step away from the door, please." His tone left no room for argument. I stumbled backward, hands raised. My mind scrambled for something plausible. I thought this was... He cut me off, his gaze hard. "Let's go downstairs." The elevator ride down was silent. My heart banged against my ribs. The guard didn't say another word. But when the doors opened, he leaned close enough that I could smell mint gum and authority. "Don't come back up, Mrs. Carter. It won't end well." End quote. He knew my name. I walked out into the cold air, legs trembling, and only when I reached my car did I realize my hands were shaking so violently I dropped the keys twice. I drove aimlessly for hours through the waterfront, past the Pike Place Market, along the viaduct where the sea met the steel-gray sky. My brain replayed his voice over and over, each time twisting the knife deeper. "Once she's gone, the rest will fall into place." He hadn't died saving anyone. He disappeared to save himself. By dusk, I pulled over near Cary Park, where the skyline spread beneath the orange wash of sunset. I sat on a bench, the Space Needle glowing like a matchstick in the distance, and tried to breathe. My world had flipped inside out. The man everyone mourned, the man who kissed me goodbye that morning on the Oregon coast, had staged everything: the drowning, the funeral, the lies. But why the hotel? Why come back now? My phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. "Unknown. Stop digging, Elena. Think of your daughter." My throat closed. No name, no punctuation, just that. I scanned the park automatically: families, walking dogs, a couple taking selfies, a jogger stretching. Normal people. None of them looked at me. None of them should have known my name. I deleted the message immediately, but the words stayed burned in my head. Think of your daughter. It wasn't a warning. It was a threat. That night I didn't go home. I drove to my friend Naomi's apartment in Westlake and parked across the street, engine running. I couldn't face anyone yet. Not my mother, not Ava. I just needed time to think, to breathe, to figure out how to move without being seen. I stared out the windshield at the streetlights flickering against the rain, trying to piece together the timeline. Matt's death, 3 months ago. His supposed heroism. The insurance payout he never let me touch. The encrypted file. The hotel booking. It all connected somehow. A web I hadn't yet mapped. And now he knew I was looking. Sometime around midnight, exhaustion hit like a wave. I drifted off in the driver's seat, arms crossed, still gripping the loyalty card. When I woke, the city was quiet, and a fine mist blurred the glass. My neck ached, but my mind was sharper. Fear had turned into something else: resolve. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. I didn't have proof, just a voice behind a door and a text message that could vanish with one swipe. They'd call me delusional, say grief had broken me. No, I needed evidence. Real, solid, irrefutable proof. The first step was obvious: the hotel. If he'd used his real name to book the room, there would be security footage, receipts, timestamps. I knew it was risky, but if I waited, they'd cover their tracks. So at sunrise, I pulled on a hoodie, tied my hair up, and headed back to the Regal Grand. I slipped in with a group of business travelers, keeping my head low. The lobby cameras swept the crowd lazily, indifferent. At the end of the hall behind the concierge desk, a door marked employees, only swung open for a housekeeper pushing a cart. I caught it with my foot and slid inside. The corridor buzzed with fluorescent light, walls lined with maintenance lockers. Farther down, an open office showed a cluster of monitors, live feeds from the hotel's security cameras. A man in a gray vest sat inside, eating a muffin, eyes glued to the screen. I stepped in quietly, heart hammering. "Excuse me," I said softly. "I think there's been a mistake. My husband checked in under the wrong name last night." He looked up, distracted. "Name?" "Carter. Matthew Carter. Room 1608. He typed it in, frowning. "Huh. That room was vacated early this morning. No luggage left behind. Just a cash payment at check-in." "Do you have footage?" He hesitated. "Not supposed to show guests, ma'am." I leaned forward. "Please, he's missing. I'm trying to find him." Something in my voice, maybe desperation, maybe the tremor of truth, made him glance around, then swivel one of the screens toward me. Grainy black and white footage rolled back 12 hours. There. Matt. Same shoulders, same gait, same damn leather jacket. Alive. Walking beside a woman with long dark hair, hand on her lower back as if nothing had happened. My breath hitched. "Can you print that?" He hesitated, then clicked a key. "You didn't get this from me," he muttered, handing me a single still frame. I took it, folded it once, and slipped it into my coat pocket. My hands shook as I turned to leave. As the lobby doors slid open, a rush of cold air hit me. I didn't look back. For the first time in months, I wasn't drowning. I was hunting. And whatever truth Matt had buried, I was ready to dig until my fingers bled. By the time I left the hotel, my fingers were trembling so hard, I nearly dropped the photo. I kept looking at it under the morning light, tracing the curve of his jaw, the tilt of his head. No mistake, Matt was alive. He'd aged maybe a little. Shorter hair, a small scar under his chin I didn't recognize. But it was him. And the woman beside him, slim, sharp-featured, long dark hair, was smiling like she owned the world. I parked at a gas station off Pike Street and stared at the image again, my breath fogging the glass. The man who'd sworn to love me until death had already held another woman's hand before the dirt on his fake grave even settled. My first instinct wasn't rage, it was humiliation. Every condolence, every pitying look from neighbors replayed in my mind. I'd been the perfect widow, the devoted wife left behind. And now I realized I'd been acting in a play someone else had written. I had to know where they were staying now. The receipt said room 1608 was checked out early, but that didn't mean they'd left the city. I remembered the way the guard had said, "Don't come back, Mrs. Carter. It won't end well." He hadn't been bluffing. He was part of it or paid to be. I drove home through the drizzle, my thoughts slicing through every memory like broken glass. Little things began to click, the way Matt had acted nervous the month before his death. The odd late-night calls he said were work emergencies. His insistence that I not check the joint account because the market was unstable. The market hadn't been unstable. He was. At home, I dumped the contents of his old duffel bag across the living room floor. Receipts, pocket change, the loyalty card, a flash drive. My hands froze on the flash drive. It was unlabeled, old, scuffed. I slid it into my laptop. Dozens of files opened, most innocuous, but one folder was hidden behind 2 layers of encryption. Same name as before, 1608. This time, I didn't try random words. I typed Ava Carter 2020, password accepted. The folder opened to reveal scanned documents, contracts, legal letters, and something titled Trust Amendment, Draft B. My eyes skimmed lines about guardianship transfers and contingent ownership. If primary spouse was declared legally incapacitated or deceased, custodianship would shift to the parents of the deceased. In short, my death or even my supposed suicide would hand my father's inheritance to Matt's family. And there, at the bottom of the draft, was an electronic signature line, not his, mine. The signature was perfect, every curve, every tilt of the letters identical. But I'd never signed it. The room spun. My mind flickered to the words I'd heard through that hotel door. Once she's gone, the rest will fall into place. Gone didn't just mean emotionally gone. It meant dead. I felt sick. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera app, and snapped photos of every document. Then I ejected the flash drive, shoved it into my pocket, and stepped outside for air. Rain had started to fall harder now, tapping against the porch railing like impatient fingers. The world seemed to tilt, slightly off its axis. Somewhere out there, Matt and that woman were living freely while planning my erasure. I called Naomi. When she answered, I didn't even say hello. I think Matt's alive, I said. And I think he's trying to kill me. There was silence then. Elena, that's not funny. I'm not joking. I saw him on hotel footage. I have files, legal files with my forged signature. She swore softly. Okay, calm down. Come over. We'll figure this out. Oh. But before I could reply, I noticed something that froze the words in my throat. A car idling at the end of my street. Black, Tacoma, broken left taillight. My stomach dropped. Elena? Naomi said on the line. I can't talk, I whispered. He's here. I ducked behind the curtain. The truck's headlights dimmed. A figure stepped out, wearing a cap pulled low. Even from the distance, I recognized that walk the same lazy confidence that had once made me feel safe. Matt. I backed away from the window, heart racing. My phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. Unknown. You should have taken the pills when you had the chance. My breath caught. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. He knew. He'd been watching me even then. I crept to the back door, slipped out barefoot, and ran across the yard to my neighbor's fence. The air smelled of wet earth and panic. I climbed over, scraping my palms raw, and hid behind their trash bins until I heard the engine rev and fade down the street. Only when silence returned did I move. I walked for nearly an hour, cutting through side streets, until I reached a 24-hour diner near Aurora Avenue. My clothes were soaked, my body trembling. The waitress stared when I ordered black coffee at 2 a.m., but didn't ask questions. Inside the bathroom, under the flickering fluorescent light, I stared at my reflection, wild eyes, mud-splattered feet, and a determination I didn't know I still had. I took out the flash drive and the photo, laying them on the sink counter. Proof that my nightmares were real. I had 2 choices now, disappear like he wanted, or fight back. Running meant safety, maybe. But it also meant surrendering my daughter's future. Matt would win. He'd raise Ava on lies, rewrite history, and erase me entirely. Fighting meant danger, but at least I'd die on my feet. I left the diner at dawn. The city glowed pink under the clouds, everything glistening from last night's rain. My breath came out steady now. I drove to a small law office near Pioneer Square, the one my father had used for his estate planning. The lawyer, Anita Patel, was still listed on the door. She blinked when she saw me. Elena Carter? I thought you moved away after the accident. I need to reopen my trust documents, I said. And I need you to look at something. She led me inside, poured coffee, and watched as I spread out the photos. Her brow furrowed deeper with every page. This is serious, she murmured. If that signature was forged, and it appears to be you're in danger, this amendment isn't legally binding yet, but if you were declared deceased or mentally unfit, it could be pushed through fast. Can we stop it? She nodded slowly. Yes, but not quietly. We'll need to file a restraining order, a fraud report, maybe even involve the police. I can't go public, I said. Not yet. I need to know where he is, who he's working with. I need evidence. Anita sighed. Then gather it. But be careful. If what you're saying is true, he's already ahead of you. I pocketed the flash drive again, thanked her, and walked out. The sky had turned a flat, pewter gray. Every shadow felt like it might move. At a red light, I looked into the rearview mirror. Behind me, a black Tacoma turned the same corner I had. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The game had begun. And I wasn't the one being hunted anymore, I was the one keeping score. By the time I reached Tacoma, the rain had shifted into a cold mist that blurred the highway lights into ribbons. I hadn't planned to come here. My hands just drove, muscle memory taking over, steering me toward the last place I swore I'd never go again, Matt's parents' house. The Carters lived in an upscale lakeside neighborhood, the kind where every mailbox matched and lawns looked airbrushed. When Matt died, his parents barely spoke to me. They'd blamed me for the trip to Oregon, said I'd pushed him too hard, that he never would have gone near that beach if I hadn't needed a change of scenery. Their grief had turned them cruel, or maybe it just stripped away what had always been there. Now, as I parked half a block away, the house glowed with warmth. Lights in the living room, laughter faint through the glass. Not mourning. Celebration. I crept closer, staying low behind the hedges. Through the window, I saw them, Margaret and William Carter, both dressed up like they were hosting a dinner party. On the coffee table sat a bottle of expensive Napa Cabernet, half empty, and a small wrapped gift box. Margaret was holding a new iPhone, showing something to her husband. The screen caught the light for a second, a photo of Matt. Not the framed, smiling one from the funeral, but a new picture. He was wearing a baseball cap and standing next to a boat. My chest tightened. William poured more wine, his voice carrying faintly through the crack in the window. He says he'll bring Ava down here once things calm. We'll finally have the trust back where it belongs. Margaret laughed softly. And what about Elena? He'll handle it, William said. He always does. The air in my lungs turned sharp. Handle it. Like I was a problem, not a person. I backed away from the window, the mist soaking through my jacket. I didn't realize I was crying until my vision blurred. For a long moment, I just stood there, listening to their voices fade into the hum of normalcy. Then I saw something else in the driveway, a brand new fishing boat, polished, registration sticker fresh. I remembered the trust paperwork, a $250,000 disbursement listed for boating and outdoor equipment, money that had been frozen since Matt's death. They weren't just aware of the scheme, they were benefiting from it. I turned back toward my car, the rage inside me steadying into focus. They had a network. Lawyers, accountants, maybe even hotel staff. I couldn't take them all on directly, not yet. I needed to be smarter. At a gas station off the freeway, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through contacts until I found one name I'd never deleted, Lucas Nguyen. We'd gone to college together. He was now an architect who freelanced for private investigation firms, using his eye for spatial detail to track surveillance footage and physical layouts. He owed me a favor from years back. I hit call. Elena? His voice was groggy. Wow, it's been what, forever? I need help, I said, and I can't explain over the phone. Are you in Seattle this week? Yeah, I'm consulting downtown. Why? Meet me at the cafe on 5th and Union in an hour, and Lucas come alone. He hesitated but agreed. By the time I reached the cafe, dawn had barely begun to gray the sky. Lucas looked exactly the same, dark curls, tired eyes that always seemed to notice everything. When he saw me, his smile faded at once. You look like you've seen a ghost. I have, I said quietly, sliding the photo across the table. He studied it, brow furrowing. That's your husband, right? The one who supposedly died, I finished. Except he didn't. I told him everything, the hotel footage, the forged documents, the threats, the black Tacoma. Lucas listened without interrupting, then leaned back. This is organized. Not just one guy faking a death. He's got help, probably financial. If he's alive and living under the radar, we can trace him through movement patterns. Hotels, ATMs, surveillance. I have a flash drive, I said. Encrypted documents. You could help me track the metadata. He nodded slowly. I can try. But Elena, if this is real, you're not safe. He knows you're digging. The truck, the messages, they're intimidation tactics. Next time, they might not just scare you. I swallowed hard. Then I have to hit first. We set up shop in Lucas's studio apartment downtown, a small space filled with sketches and screens. He plugged the flash drive into his desktop and started pulling metadata. Within minutes, lines of code and timestamps filled the monitor. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, he muttered. The documents were created from 2 different IP addresses, one from here in Seattle, one from a router in Tacoma. His parents, I whispered. Maybe, but this, he clicked another file. This one was modified yesterday, from an IP registered to the Regal Grand Hotel. The breath left my body. They're still using that place as a base. Lucas nodded grimly. If you want proof, we'll need to get access to their floor again. Cameras, maybe leftover fingerprints. But you can't go alone. I've already gone alone, I said, and I'm still here. He sighed. You're impossible. But later that night, he was there beside me, parked outside the Regal Grand with a duffel bag of camera equipment and a plan. We waited until midnight, when the hotel lobby thinned out. Lucas moved like a shadow, quiet, methodical. He'd built devices that could clone RFID signals from keycards, a trick learned from an old security gig. Hold this near the staff reader, he whispered. Within seconds, a soft beep confirmed the clone. We slipped inside the elevator and pressed 16. The corridor was dark, most of the lights dimmed for night. My pulse thudded in my ears. Room 1608 looked the same, pristine, silent, innocuous. Lucas crouched, pulling a small UV light from his pocket. He swept it over the handle, the carpet, the baseboard. There, he murmured, pointing to faint smudges of fingerprints near the latch. Recent, less than 24 hours old. I didn't know whether to feel vindicated or terrified. Then we heard footsteps at the far end of the hall. Steady. Slow. Lucas motioned for silence. We slipped behind a cleaning cart as a man appeared, tall, wearing a hotel security uniform. For a moment, I thought it might be the same one from before, but this one was younger. He paused in front of 1608, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. Through the thin gap, I saw the flicker of light, a laptop booting up, the blue glow illuminating his face. And then I saw the screen. Video conference, M. Carter. Lucas's eyes widened. He's calling in. I bit back a gasp. Matt's voice came through faintly. Everything on schedule? Yes, sir, the guard replied. We moved her car near the water like you said. Makes it look like she's planning something. My blood ran cold. They were staging my suicide. Lucas grabbed my arm. We have to go. We retreated to the stairwell just as the guard's phone buzzed again. Down the steps, hearts hammering, we didn't speak until we burst out into the back alley, gasping for air. Lucas turned to me. Elena, this isn't just fraud anymore. This is attempted murder. I nodded slowly, eyes burning. Then it's time to stop running. From the alley, I looked back at the glowing windows of the Regal Grand, my husband's voice still echoing in my ears. For the first time since that night with the pills, I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of not fighting hard enough to live. By the time we reached my car, dawn was bleeding through the clouds. The city was still half asleep, quiet in that eerie way only early morning can be, like the world is holding its breath. Lucas sat in the passenger seat, face pale under the streetlight glow. I could see the questions swirling behind his eyes, but he didn't ask them yet. He just stared at the hotel receding in the rearview mirror. They're framing you, he said finally, voice low. I nodded, knuckles white on the steering wheel. I know. That guard said they moved my car to the water. They're going to make it look like I drowned myself. Lucas exhaled hard, running a hand through his hair. Jesus, Elena, you need to go to the police. And tell them what? That my dead husband is alive and trying to kill me? They'll lock me up for evaluation before they look into it. He didn't argue, because he knew I was right. We drove in silence for a while, the highway lights sliding across our faces. The flash drive, the forged trust papers, the staged suicide, all of it circled my mind like vultures. Every piece pointed toward one truth. They wanted me gone and Ava with them, under their control. When we reached my neighborhood, I slowed. My chest tightened. My car was gone from the driveway. The house looked ordinary from the outside, blinds drawn, porch light off, but a faint hum vibrated from inside, like a refrigerator door left ajar. Lucas touched my arm. "We can't go in." "I need Ava's things," I said, already opening the door. "Her birth certificate, her passport, everything." He sighed, muttered a curse, and followed. We entered through the back, where the kitchen window latch was still broken from years ago. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt wrong, cold, staged. The smell of bleach stung my nose. Then I saw it on the table, a single glass of wine, half empty. Next to it, a folded piece of paper. My heart dropped before I even opened it. It was a suicide note, typed, clean. "I can't live with the guilt anymore. Please take care of Ava. Elena." Lucas's jaw tightened. "They're moving fast." "I know. They were here," I whispered. "Probably last night." He glanced around the room. "We need to leave now. They might be watching." But before we could move, a light flashed outside a pair of headlights turning into the driveway. A car door slammed. I grabbed Lucas's arm, pulling him toward the hallway. We ducked into Ava's room. I could hear footsteps on the porch, keys scraping metal. The front door opened. A man's voice. Calm. Familiar. "Elena? You home?" "Matt." The sound of him speaking my name made my stomach twist. Lucas tensed beside me. I held a finger to my lips. He moved through the house slowly, deliberate. The boards creaked under his shoes. I could picture him scanning the living room, glancing at the staged glass of wine, the note. He was checking his work. Then he spoke again, softer this time. "You shouldn't have come back here, sweetheart." I could almost hear the smile in his voice. Lucas leaned close, whispering, "We can go through the back door if we stay low." But before we could move, Matt's phone rang. He answered immediately. "Yeah," he said. "She's not here. But the place looks good. Get the truck ready. Once the cops find the note, it'll be done." He paused, then chuckled. "No, I'm not worried. She's too scared to do anything stupid." I looked at Lucas, and for the first time, I smiled not from joy, but from something sharper. "He's wrong. When Matt turned his back, we slipped out the back door, running across the yard. The cold air sliced through my lungs. My pulse thundered so loud I couldn't hear the gravel under my feet. We made it to Lucas's car just as the engine of Matt's truck rumbled to life behind us. "Drive," I hissed. Lucas peeled out of the neighborhood, tires screeching. I twisted in my seat, watching as Matt's silhouette appeared on the porch, phone pressed to his ear. He knew. For the next hour, we didn't speak. We drove south, out of Seattle, past the sleeping suburbs, and into the long stretches of forest highway. When we finally pulled over near a deserted rest stop, dawn had cracked open the horizon. Lucas turned to me. "You need to disappear, Elena. Change your name, take Ava, leave the state. Whatever this is, it's beyond us." I stared out at the mist creeping over the trees. If I run, they win. And Ava grows up thinking her mother killed herself. Imel. He didn't have an answer for that. I rubbed my temples. I need leverage. Something that ties him and his parents to the fraud. Proof that can't be erased. Lucas thought for a moment, then said, "What about financial records? If they use the trust money, there'll be transactions." "The trust was handled by a financial firm in downtown Seattle," I said slowly. "Stonebridge Investments. My father's lawyer worked with them." "Then that's where we go next." We reached the city before the offices opened. Lucas parked 2 blocks away while I pulled a cap over my hair and borrowed his jacket. Inside Stonebridge, the air smelled like money leather, coffee, and polished marble. A young receptionist greeted me with a rehearsed smile. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said smoothly. "I'm here to review disbursement details for the Carter Family Trust. I was told to speak with Mr. Holmes." She typed for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, he's in. Let me let him know you're here, Mrs. Carter." The sound of that name stung, but I didn't correct her. Minutes later, a man in his 50s appeared, gray suit, careful smile. "Mrs. Carter, good to see you again. I wasn't expecting well, given the circumstances." I shook his hand, keeping mine steady. I just have a few questions about some transactions made recently. He gestured toward his office. Please. The moment the door closed, I dropped the act. Mr. Holmes, I know my husband isn't dead. He froze. The mask slipped just slightly before he recovered. That's a very serious claim. And I have proof, I said, sliding the photo across his desk. What I want now are the records, transfers, disbursements, anything tied to him or his parents since the date of his supposed death. He hesitated. You know I can't disclose that without proper authorization. Then maybe I should show this to the press instead. I pulled out the printed trust amendment, the forged one with my fake signature. His eyes widened. After a long silence, he opened a drawer and took out a flash drive identical to mine. You didn't get this from me, he muttered. But if what you're saying is true, you're in real danger. They've already funneled over $300,000 from the trust into offshore accounts. If they can prove your death, the rest goes automatically. I took the drive, heart hammering. Thank you. He leaned closer. One more thing. Someone came asking about you last week. Said he was your family attorney. I checked the registry, there's no one by that name. His name? Daniel Reese. I swallowed. Reese was Matt's middle name. When I stepped out of the building, the world felt smaller, tighter. Lucas met me on the sidewalk. You get it? Yes, I said, holding up the drive. And a name? Whose? My husband's fake one. Oh. We walked quickly toward the car, but just before we reached it, I noticed the reflection in a shop window, a man leaning against a lamppost, phone to his ear, cap pulled low. The same build. The same lazy confidence. Matt. Our eyes met through the glass, and for the first time he smiled slow, knowing, as if we were both playing the same game and he was still certain he'd already won. But he was wrong. This time, I wasn't the grieving widow. I was the storm coming for him. That smile stayed with me long after he vanished into the crowd, the kind of smile that said, I've already buried you, and you're too stupid to realize it. It burned behind my eyes as Lucas drove us across the city, his knuckles tight on the steering wheel. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The hum of the tires on wet asphalt filled the silence between us like a warning. Finally, he said, He's escalating. If he showed his face, he's either trying to scare you back into hiding or lure you somewhere on his terms. I stared out the window. He's not getting either. We stopped at a small coffee shop near the edge of town, the kind of place with flickering neon and nobody asking questions. Inside, the air was thick with burnt espresso and old jazz. Lucas set up his laptop at a corner booth while I kept my eyes on the door. I'd been paranoid before, but now paranoia felt like survival. He plugged in both flash drives, mine and the one from Stonebridge. Streams of data flooded the screen. These files are mirrored, he said, typing fast. Different upload dates, but they share the same encryption key. Someone inside the firm duplicated the trust archive and rerouted funds to a shell company. What company? I asked. He zoomed in. Northlake Holdings LLC, registered 3 months ago. Guess who the listed managing partner is? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The name glared from the screen, Daniel Reese. My pulse spiked. That's him. That's Matt's alias. Lucas whistled low. He's good. Set this up before his death. Built it layer by layer like a firewall made of lies. But he tapped a key. He made one mistake. He used his old work laptop to initiate the first transfer. The MAC address is traceable. If we can get that device, we can prove everything. And where would that be? Probably with whoever's helping him handle the logistics. Someone local, someone with access. My mind jumped instantly to his parents. They're the core. The trust documents named them secondary guardians for Ava. They'd need proof of my death to activate it. They're waiting for a body. Lucas looked at me, expression grim. Then we can't give them one. You need to vanish officially. Fake a breakdown. Maybe check into a hospital under a new name. Let them think you've snapped. Meanwhile, we get the laptop and hit them when they least expect it. I hesitated. You're talking about going undercover. I'm talking about buying time, he said. Right now, every move you make, they see. You have to disappear from the board so they think they've won. For a long moment, I just stared at him. The idea terrified me, but so did every alternative. Okay, I said finally. But if I do this, Ava needs to be safe. He nodded. I'll take her to my sister's place in San Diego. She's a social worker, low profile. Nobody will think to look there. My throat tightened at the thought of letting her go, even for a week. But I knew he was right. The safest place for her was far away from me. That night, I packed Ava's clothes, her favorite stuffed rabbit, and a photo of us three on the beach, the one I'd kept on the nightstand since before everything fell apart. She was asleep when I kissed her forehead for the last time. Lucas watched from the doorway. You sure about this? I nodded, even though my voice trembled. Tell her mommy loves her. And that I'm coming back. When they drove away, the silence in the house felt like a scream. I waited an hour before heading to the hospital. I'd called ahead, using an alias Elena Matthews, diagnosed with temporary post-traumatic psychosis. A sympathetic nurse, bribed with a bundle of cash from the last of my savings, agreed to admit me for a few days without putting my name in the main system. Inside, the walls were sterile white, humming faintly with the sound of air conditioning and fluorescent lights. The nurse handed me a hospital bracelet with the false name. You'll be safe here, she said softly. Nobody looks too closely at the broken. The irony wasn't lost on me. From my room window, I watched the rain pour down on the city. Each drop streaked the glass like a countdown. Somewhere out there, Matt was plotting his next move. But for the first time, I wasn't a step behind, I was invisible. 2 days later, the nurse slipped me a small burner phone and a folded piece of paper. A man came by earlier, she whispered. Said it was urgent. My stomach clenched. What man? He didn't give a name. Just said you'd understand. I opened the paper. 2 words, typed clean. Check basement. It wasn't Matt's handwriting. It was Lucas's. That night, after the nurse's rounds, I slipped out of bed and down the dim hallway, silent as breath. The service elevator rattled as it carried me to the basement, a space of humming machines and flickering bulbs. I turned the corner and froze. Lucas was there, waiting, pale, bruised, eyes wild. What happened? I whispered. He handed me a flash drive, fingers shaking. They found me. Who? 2 men, hired muscle. They ransacked my place, took my laptop, but I managed to copy the data first. There's more. The laptop with the MAC address? It's at their family house in Tacoma. Matt's mother's study, bottom drawer. I saw the log through the sync trail before they cut power. Jesus, Lucas. I'm fine, he said, though his voice cracked. But you need to get that drive. It's the only proof that links the trust theft to his fake death. Off they. Before I could reply, a sharp sound echoed through the hall, the metallic click of footsteps. Lucas tensed. They followed me. We ducked behind an old generator as shadows stretched across the wall. 2 men entered, both tall, both wearing black coats. One carried a gun. My pulse pounded in my ears. Lucas squeezed my wrist, silently counting. 3, 2, 1. We bolted. The men shouted, the sound ricocheting through the pipes. A gunshot cracked, deafening. Sparks burst from a panel inches from my head. We sprinted through the corridor, burst through an exit door, and stumbled into the alley behind the hospital. Lucas gasped, clutching his arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. Go, he hissed. Take it. He shoved the drive into my palm. I'm not leaving you. Go, he roared. They want you, not me. I hesitated 1 second too long, just enough to hear the next gunshot. He crumpled. I screamed his name, but the echo swallowed it whole. The men were closing in, shouting orders into radios. I ran, every step ripping something inside me apart. My breath burned, my vision tunneled, but I didn't stop until I reached the main road and flagged down a taxi. As we sped away, the city lights blurred again, just like the night I almost swallowed those pills. Except this time, I wasn't running from death. I was carrying proof of it. I looked at the flash drive in my trembling hand and whispered, You didn't die for nothing, Lucas. The driver glanced in the mirror. You okay, lady? No, I said softly, eyes fixed on the black shape of the Tacoma behind us, closing in through the rain. But I will be. The taxi roared down I-5 while dawn clawed its way through the clouds, bleeding silver across the wet pavement. My hand clenched around the flash drive until the corners bit my skin. Lucas was gone. The only person who believed me dead because he tried to help. I forced the thought away. I couldn't afford grief. Not again. Grief made people slow, and slow people died. Keep driving, I told the cabbie. Anywhere south of the city. He nodded, eyes on the road, music low and tinny from the radio. I watched the mirror. The Tacoma trailed us for 20 minutes, steady, patient, like a shark waiting for blood to bloom. Then, just past Federal Way, it disappeared. Either they'd lost me or they wanted me to think they had. I got out near a truck stop off the highway, paid in cash, and walked half a mile down an access road to an abandoned strip mall. The rain had turned to fog. Every streetlight buzzed like an insect. I ducked into a closed laundromat and collapsed onto the cold tile floor. Only then did I let myself breathe. The flash drive was still in my pocket, slick with sweat. Lucas's last act. Proof that Matt wasn't just a liar, he was a thief, a murderer, and a ghost wearing my husband's face. I pulled out the burner phone the nurse had given me and opened its single saved contact, Naomi, my best friend since college. I hadn't called her since this nightmare began, but now I needed someone who could act without flinching. She picked up on the third ring. Elena? Where the hell have you been? Your mom called the police, everyone thinks you. Listen, I cut in. Don't say my name again. Don't post about me. Don't tell anyone we spoke, but I need you to do something. A pause. Then, quietly, what's going on? I'm sending you a file. If something happens to me, I want you to go to the Seattle Times, ask for journalist Kara Owens. She'll know what to do. Elena, you're scaring me. Good, I said. Stay scared. It'll keep you alive. I hung up before she could answer. The fog outside thickened until the world turned ghostly white. I had to move. Sitting still made me feel like a target painted on glass. I took the side streets toward the sound of traffic and found an all-night diner glowing faintly through the haze. Inside, truckers sipped coffee, heads buried in phones. I took a booth near the back, ordered tea I didn't drink, and opened my laptop. The moment I plugged in the flash drive, the screen pulsed with encrypted files, Lucas's handwriting on digital code. He'd left a note, a small text file titled, "For E." If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out. The drive has location data from North Lake Holdings offshore accounts and internal emails between Daniel Reese and Stonebridge staff. Enough to bury them if you survive long enough to use it. There's also a folder marked Evidence, pull that one last. Trust no one with a badge, and Elena, finish this. I swallowed hard. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. When I opened the folder, my stomach turned. Dozens of photos, surveillance shots of me and Ava. At the park, the grocery store, even our backyard. Dates, times, coordinates. They'd been tracking us for months before Matt's staged death. Another subfolder contained insurance documents naming Margaret Carter as the secondary beneficiary. I stared at the screen until everything blurred. This wasn't just fraud, it was premeditated. They'd built a system designed to erase me cleanly, legally, and profitably. Refill, hon? The waitress asked, pulling me back. Yeah, please. I smiled weakly. She poured, then lingered, her eyes flicking to the corner booth by the window. Two men in black coats had just walked in. Everything okay? She whispered. Yeah, I lied. I was just leaving. I grabbed my bag, unplugged the laptop, and slipped through the kitchen door. The cooks barely looked up as I pushed through the back exit into the rain. My sneakers slapped the asphalt. I didn't look back, not even when I heard the door bang open behind me. I ran until my lungs felt like sandpaper, finally ducking into a freight yard under the bridge. Cargo containers loomed like tombstones in the mist. I crouched between two of them and tried to slow my breathing. My clothes were soaked, my hair plastered to my face, the flash drive still burned in my pocket. Footsteps echoed. Someone was following. I crawled deeper between the containers, pressing myself flat. A flashlight beam cut through the fog, sweeping across the metal walls. Then a voice, steady, almost casual. Elena, it called. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Matt. I froze. He was close now, maybe 10 yards away. I could hear the crunch of gravel under his boots. I know you think you've won, he said. But all you've done is make it messy. You should have stayed dead when you had the chance. The beam of light passed inches from my shoes. I held my breath until the ache in my lungs became unbearable. He stopped. You know, I really did love you once, he said quietly. But people change. You A sudden metallic crash interrupted him. A train horn blared from the next yard over, drowning everything in thunder. In the chaos, I slipped out the far end of the row and sprinted toward the fence. "Elena!" he shouted. I didn't stop. I vaulted the fence, tearing my palms open on the wire, and dropped into the weeds on the other side. The rain was coming down harder now, masking the sound of my footsteps. I stumbled onto a service road and kept running until I saw headlights from an approaching truck. I stepped into the middle of the road, waving my arms. The truck screeched to a halt. The driver, a woman in her 60s, rolled down her window, eyes wide. "Are you crazy?" "Please," I gasped. "I need a ride. Anywhere." She hesitated, then jerked her chin toward the passenger seat. "Get in." I climbed in, soaked and shaking. The heater blasted warm air, and for a moment I almost cried from the shock of it. "Rough night?" she asked. "You have no idea." She chuckled softly. "Name's Nora. Heading toward Portland if that helps." "Portland, south, away, perfect." As the truck rumbled back onto the highway, I finally let myself breathe. Matt was still out there, furious, hunting, but for the first time, I had something he didn't. Proof. Real. Unalterable. Deadly proof. Through the fogged window, the city lights shrank behind us, swallowed by rain. I touched the flash drive again, whispering under my breath like a vow. "You wanted me gone, Matt," I said, "but you're the one who's about to disappear." Nora glanced over. "What'd you say, hon?" I smiled faintly. Just thinking out loud. Outside, the highway stretched on like a dark river, endless and waiting. I had no plan, no safety, and no home, but I had purpose. And sometimes, that's all you need to start a war. By the time the truck crossed into Oregon, the storm had thinned to a soft drizzle. The world outside the windshield looked washed out and unreal, as if someone had drained the color from it. I hadn't slept in almost 30 hours, but exhaustion felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Every time my eyelids dipped, I saw Lucas falling, heard the echo of Matt's voice calling my name in the freight yard. Nora glanced at me from behind the wheel. "You sure you're okay, honey? You've been staring at that little thing in your hand for an hour." I looked down. The flash drive gleamed faintly in the gray light. "Yeah," I murmured. "Just work stuff." She gave me a skeptical look but didn't push. Maybe she'd seen enough broken people in her life to recognize one. When we reached Portland, she dropped me off at a diner near the bus terminal. "Good luck, sweetheart," she said, squeezing my hand. "Whatever you're running from, I hope you catch it before it catches you." I managed a weak smile. "Me too." Inside, I bought a burner laptop from a pawn shop next door and found a quiet booth in the corner. The smell of bacon and coffee felt almost normal, almost human. I opened the flash drive and went straight to the last folder Lucas had labeled Evidence. It contained 3 video files. The first 2 were time-stamped the week before Matt's death. The third was from 2 nights ago. I clicked the first one. The footage was grainy, security camera style, but the voices were clear. Matt stood in a hotel suite, phone to his ear. "Yes," he said. "She believes it's just a weekend trip. I'll take the kayak out at dawn. You handle the rest." He laughed softly. "Don't worry, the life insurance will look clean." A second voice, William Carter, his father responded. "And the girl? I'll get custody through my parents. Once she's dead, the trust shifts automatically." The words hit me like a physical blow. I paused the video, pressing a shaking hand to my mouth. The second clip was shorter, Margaret signing documents at a desk. "Make sure her handwriting looks right," she said. "We can't have her ghosting us from beyond the grave." And then, the final video. The one from 2 nights ago. The camera showed a dimly lit living room, my living room, the note on the table, the half-full wine glass, Matt sitting in my chair, calm as a snake. "By tomorrow," he said into his phone, "they'll find the car near the docks. The note's ready. The pills are in the cabinet. All that's left is her." My hand trembled so violently the laptop nearly fell from the table. I shut it fast, chest heaving. People around me turned to stare, so I forced myself to sit still, to breathe, to look normal. I needed to think. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. I called Naomi again, voice shaking. "Did you send the file to Kara Owens?" "Yeah, she called me. She said she wants to meet you. Today, somewhere safe. Where? Old Union Station? Noon. She said she'll have protection. Protection. I wanted to believe that word still meant something. At 11:45, I was there. The station was mostly empty, just a few travelers. A barista cleaning the counter, the echo of rain against the glass roof. Naomi appeared first, nervous, scanning the crowd. Then a woman in a dark coat approached her. Kara. Short hair, sharp eyes, the kind of face that looked like it had seen too many lies to fall for one more. "Elena Carter?" she asked when she reached me. I hesitated before nodding. "I wasn't sure I should trust you." "That makes two of us," she said dryly, "but your friend here showed me enough to get the newsroom's attention. We ran the metadata. Those files on your husband are real." Naomi looked between us. "So what happens now?" Kara lowered her voice. "We publish. Tonight, I already contacted a federal investigator I trust off the record. Once the story hits, the Carters won't be able to hide." I exhaled shakily. "Then let's do it." She reached into her bag, pulled out a recorder. "Before we move forward, I need a full statement. Everything from the faked drowning to the threats. You ready?" I was. For the first time in months, I was ready. She hit record, and I started talking. My voice wavered at first, but the more I spoke, the steadier it became. By the end, my fear had hardened into something else resolve. When she clicked off the recorder, she smiled faintly. "You're stronger than most people I've met." "Stronger," I said, "or just out of options." We walked toward the exit together, Naomi trailing a few steps behind. The rain outside had turned into a drizzle again, soft against the pavement. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. Then the explosion hit. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to shake the ground. The coffee kiosk near the entrance burst into flames, glass shattering across the floor. People screamed. I hit the ground, pulling Naomi down with me. Kara shouted something, but I couldn't hear. The sound was just static and ringing. Smoke filled the air, acrid and choking. I looked up just in time to see two men in black coats push through the crowd, guns drawn. "Run!" Chara yelled. We sprinted toward the service corridor. I could hear the men shouting, "She's there, move," and the heavy slap of their boots echoing closer. Naomi stumbled, crying out. I grabbed her arm and kept running. A door at the end of the hallway led to a stairwell. We burst through, feet pounding down the steps two at a time. Somewhere above, a gun fired. The bullet hit the railing, sparking. We reached the bottom and burst out into an alley slick with rain. Kara pulled a pistol from under her coat. Federal issue. "Get to the car," she shouted, pointing to a black SUV parked half a block away. Naomi and I ran. Behind us, another gunshot. Then silence. When I turned, Kara was on the ground. Blood spreading fast. For a second, I froze. Then instinct took over. I knelt beside her, grabbing her hand. "Stay with me." She coughed, blood bubbling on her lips. "Drive," she rasped. "Laptop. Publish." Her eyes went glassy before I could say anything else. I took the recorder and her car keys and ran. Naomi screamed my name, but I couldn't stop. The killers were already in the alley. I dove into the SUV, started the engine, and slammed the gas pedal. The tires screamed against the wet concrete as we tore into the street. Naomi clutched the door handle, sobbing. "What now? Elena, what now?" I glanced in the mirror. The men were getting smaller, but one lifted a phone to his ear. Reinforcements would come. "We finish it," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. "We publish everything." She blinked through her tears. "How?" I held up the recorder. With her last words. We drove toward the freeway, headlights slicing through the fog. Behind us, sirens wailed. Ahead, the dawn was breaking again, gray, fierce, unstoppable. I didn't know where the road would end, or whether I'd make it to the next sunrise. But I knew this. Matt had lit a fire, and I was going to burn his empire to the ground, even if it took me with it. The SUV swallowed miles of highway while the rain thinned to a pale mist. Naomi kept repeating Kara's name like a prayer, fingers clamped white knuckled around the steering wheel. I sat in the passenger seat with the recorder in my lap, Kara's blood smeared on the corner of the device like an ugly, irreversible stamp. Her last words echoed in my head, published like an order and a benediction, both. I had a file, an editor, and a federal contact who'd been willing to act. Now I had to finish what she started. We pulled off the freeway 2 towns over, into a motel parking lot with a flickering neon sign that hummed like static. The room smelled of lemon cleaner and cigarettes. Naomi paced while I set the recorder on the small table and connected it to her laptop. My hands were steady. My voice had a thin edge to it, but it cut through cleanly when I recorded the final statement. Names, dates, transactions, hotels, the words I'd heard through a door, and the videos Lucas had copied. I narrated them like evidence, clinically, because emotion would be a knife in the wrong hands. We exported the files, encrypted them, then uploaded them to a secure server. Kara had given me the credentials for an address that would automatically send the package to her editor, to the federal investigator, and to a reporter at the Seattle Times. We sat in the motel room like criminals and waited for the world to change. It took less than 3 hours. At 3:14 p.m., my phone buzzed until it rattled off the table with an incoming number marked unlisted. I answered with my throat in my mouth. "Editor Owens," the voice said, sharp and precise. "We've got it, Elena. Phone in a minute." The line clicked. Headlines were already being drafted. Kara's team had spun the metadata into a story that couldn't be ignored. Local hero faked death in elaborate scheme to seize wife's trust, new evidence shows. The piece linked the Stonebridge documents, the security footage, Northlake Holdings transfers, and the surveillance clips Lucas had risked his life to copy. It named names Daniel Reese as an alias, Margaret and William Carter as beneficiaries, and, with the sober, terrible phrasing of a newsroom that knew how to cut, Matt Carter as a living suspect in a conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted homicide. By the time Naomi and I woke the next morning, the story had exploded. Our feeds were a river of outraged comments, phone calls, and messages from journalists wanting interviews. My mother called and then didn't leave a message because she was too stunned to speak. Alerts pinged from the federal investigator's office, agents ready to move. Anonymous threats came too, hysterical, angry, cowardly. But the world had seen the evidence. People who had nothing to gain now had justification to act. Within 48 hours, there were raids. Federal agents moved like a force of nature, clinical and inevitable. Stonebridge Investments offices were searched. Bank accounts tied to Northlake Holdings were frozen. The bank called to confirm suspicious transfers, offshore conduits, siphoning funds into shells. A grand jury convened in King County. Arrest warrants were served quietly in the dead hours. 2 men taken from their beds in Tacoma, cuffed in their pajamas. Margaret and William Carter were detained for questioning at their lakeside home. They were allowed counsel and denied bail initially. No one called to tell me where they took them. Matt was more difficult. For someone who had faked his own death so thoroughly, he had the advantage of being nimble, moving through a web of safe houses, trusted staff, and hotels. The hotel footage and the Stonebridge logs drew a red line to Tacoma, to the boat in their driveway, to the new pickups registered under shell companies. But when agents knocked on doors, they found empty bedrooms and false leads. It felt like watching smoke. You could tell where it had been, but not quite where it had gone. Despite that, the pressure mounted. The media cycle's roar drew attention like heat draws flies. Secrets crack under that intensity. Investors called Stonebridge's board and demanded answers. The trustee who'd been managing my father's legacy resigned under suspicion. The trust's assets were locked. Emergency guardianship hearings were scheduled to determine immediate custody of Ava. The legal machine churned toward me like a rescue mission. I would not be left a powerless ghost. But there was a cost. The Carters' defense lawyers moved quickly to file counterclaims. Defamation, claims that the evidence had been doctored, accusations that I was a vindictive widow making up stories for revenge. They sought gag orders against the press and restraining orders against me, classic legal jujitsu to silence the accuser while they regrouped. Their PR team tried to carve out a sympathetic narrative, devastated parents of a lost son, a community torn. It was theater. The hush money checks and sympathetic op-eds followed like shadows. On a rainy Thursday, the federal investigator who'd been working quietly off the record called me. His voice was gruff, professional, and for the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't holding the whole world alone. "We've got probable cause for several indictments," he told me. "Financial fraud, conspiracy, attempted homicide. But we need him in custody to make the case airtight. If he's cornered, he gets sloppy. He'll make mistakes. Keep your head down." I asked about Lucas. They had found a trace, a throat-deep trail of GPS pings, dead drops, and a hospital camera that had captured his face leaving the alley. They sent a forensics team to the freight yard and found evidence of a struggle. They found traces of the men who'd chased him, but Lucas was gone. I wanted to scream. The loss twisted around me like wire. The investigator assured me they were looking, that a warrant for attempted murder was being circulated, and that they'd prioritized tracking the hit team. He said the hotel guard had been placed on leave pending questioning. The word protected witness was used, and it felt like a thin slice of light. The community's reaction was a blend of outrage and morbid fascination. Local support groups called Strangers sent notes of solidarity. Someone paid for a billboard in Ballard that simply read, "Justice for Elena and Ava." It felt small and huge at once. I clung to it like a talisman. The night after the raids, I went to the pier alone. The water was a black sheet under a sky washed of stars. The place where they claimed my husband had drowned was empty. The memorial flowers had been taken down by the city, cleared as evidence, but a few candles remained, melted into little moons of wax. I crouched and placed my hand on the cold wood. "You messed with the wrong person," I said softly into the dark, though I knew he couldn't hear me. It wasn't for him. It was for myself, for Ava, for Lucas. It was a vow. The case was moving, but nothing felt finished. Arrests would be made, evidence would be presented, men might go to prison. But the legal fight that would follow civil suits, long hearings, the gnawing grind of discovery was its own battleground. Matt wasn't caught yet. The Carters' machinations could still wriggle out from under the net if there were holes. Their lawyers were good. People with money and motive often were. Still, for the first time since that cold morning at the Regal Grand, I slept through a sunset without dreaming of water. Morning came with coffee and a list of meetings. The investigator, my lawyer Anita, the editor at the paper. There were depositions to prepare for, a hearing for emergency custody of Ava. I felt more exhausted than triumphant, but something inside me had shifted. The fight had hit back. I picked up my phone and dialed Ava's number. Hearing her little voice over the line, "Mommy," was like opening a window in a sealed room. I told her about the truck, about Nana and Papa staying with her at Grandma's, about how Mommy was coming home soon. She believed me. Children are resilient in ways that make adults ashamed. Hanging up, I walked to the living room window and watched the rain make rivers in the gutters. The world had pivoted around my accusations and the journalist's courage. Evidence had become a weapon, and that weapon was blunt and messy and real. But beneath the legal victories and the news footage, a primitive part of me knew the truth. This wasn't over until Matt was in handcuffs, until the trust was legally secured, until Ava's name was safe and Lucas's killers were behind bars, until I could walk past the pier and not hear the ocean like a drum in my chest. The next morning's headlines screamed of indictments and raids. The Carters' attorneys cried foul, their PR spun grief. The country loves a hero and hates a liar. That was a battle I'd just begun to win. But war leaves scars. And as the media storm surged, someone slipped a single, simple message to my burner phone. "You should have taken the pills when you had the chance." It was a reminder that even with the world watching, danger still breathed down my neck. The net had been cast, but until every knot was tightened, the water could still shift beneath my feet. The text message burned on the screen like an ember. "You should have taken the pills when you had the chance." I stared at it until the letters began to blur, until fear stopped feeling like a spike and turned into a steady, low hum at the base of my skull. The FBI had frozen the Carters' accounts, the media had turned them into pariahs, but Matt was still out there. That message was proof. He wasn't hiding anymore, he was watching. I forwarded the text to the federal investigator, Agent Danner. Within minutes, he called back. "Miss Carter, where are you right now?" "At my mother's house," I said, glancing toward the dark window. "Ava's asleep upstairs." "Lock the doors," he said. "We've got a trace running. Stay put until I send someone." But waiting felt like standing on train tracks, listening for something you couldn't see. Every creak of the house made my heart race. My mother sat on the couch, silent, her hands folded tight in her lap. She was tough, Vietnamese refugee tough, but tonight she looked small. "He won't come here," she whispered. "He'd never hurt Ava." I almost laughed. "He already tried to kill me. You think the man who faked his own death has a line he won't cross?" The wind howled outside, making the old windows shudder. I moved through the house quietly, checking locks, peeking through curtains. No Tacoma in sight. Just rain, soft and relentless. At 11:47 p.m., the power went out. The lights died with a pop. The refrigerator hummed once and fell silent. The house sank into thick, heavy dark. My mother gasped. "Stay with Ava," I said, grabbing the flashlight from the drawer. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. "Don't move until I say." I stepped into the hallway. The beam of light caught the family photos on the wall, smiling faces that now looked like ghosts. My pulse hammered in my throat. The back door creaked. "Matt," I said softly into the dark, "if you're here, this is your last chance." Silence, then a whisper. "It was supposed to be easier than this." He was behind me. I spun, flashlight beam slicing across the kitchen. He stood there, drenched, face shadowed, wearing that same leather jacket from the hotel footage. His eyes were flat. Whatever humanity had been there once was gone. "You ruined everything," he said. "I could have taken care of you, you know, a clean death, an easy story, but you had to drag it into the light." I felt something inside me snap, not from fear, but from exhaustion. "You call this taking care of me? You tried to turn my life into a headline. You used our daughter's name to launder money. You made me mourn you." He stepped forward, hands open. "It was supposed to end quick. You were supposed to take the pills. I even wrote you a note, made it gentle." I raised the flashlight higher. "You forged my signature. That's not gentle. That's murder." For the first time, he smiled, the same slow, taunting grin from the hotel hallway. "Maybe. But you played your part beautifully. The grieving widow America loved you. It made the story perfect." He reached inside his jacket, and I saw the glint of metal. "Don't," I warned. But he pulled it anyway, a small handgun, black, slick with rain. "I just want it to be over," he said, almost pleading. "If you die here, they'll call it retaliation, a tragic misunderstanding. The sympathy will come back to me. It always does." Before I could move, a second light flared behind him, red and blue. "FBI, drop it!" The shout shattered the tension. Matt froze, eyes darting toward the windows where beams of light cut through the rain. I didn't wait. I lunged. The flashlight cracked against his wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. He swung back hard, catching me across the cheek, sending me sprawling into the counter. Pain exploded across my face, but I scrambled up, kicking the gun away just as the door burst open. 2 agents stormed in, weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them." Matt looked at me once, just long enough for me to see something flicker in his expression. Regret? No. Calculation. Then he ran. The agents chased him through the back door into the storm. I stumbled after them, blood pounding in my ears. The yard was chaos, rain, mud, shouting. Matt bolted toward the woods behind the property. A gunshot cracked through the night. When I reached the tree line, one of the agents was kneeling in the mud, radio pressed to his ear. "Suspect down. Repeat, suspect is down." Matt lay face down near the fence, the rain turning the ground beneath him into a red pool. His chest rose once, twice, then stopped. For a moment, everything went silent. No rain, no shouts, no wind, just that impossible stillness that comes when a storm finally breaks. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, staring at the man who had destroyed everything we were, the man who had loved me once and then tried to erase me. Agent Danner appeared beside me, soaked and breathing hard. "It's over, Miss Carter." But it didn't feel over. They took my statement until dawn. The gun, the confrontation, the text message, all of it matched the timeline. The forensic evidence would prove he'd been there, prove his intent. The Carters' parents, already under arrest, broke within a week, trading testimony for leniency. The story went national. Hero husband dead twice. Fraud ring exposed in suburban Seattle. A month later, I sat in a courtroom while the judge formally transferred custody of Ava to me, reinstating my full guardianship and access to my father's trust. Anita squeezed my shoulder when the gavel fell. "It's done," she said softly. "But grief is never really done." After the hearing, I drove out to the coast, the same Oregon beach where Matt had died the first time. The sky was overcast, the air sharp with salt. Ava ran ahead, chasing gulls, laughing. Her laughter was the only sound I wanted to keep. I stood by the waterline, letting the waves creep over my shoes. The ocean had taken him once, and I had spent months wishing it had taken me too. Now I understood. Survival isn't mercy. It's responsibility. Behind me, Ava called, "Mom, come see." I turned. She was holding a shell, small and pink, cupped in her hands. I smiled and knelt beside her. "That's beautiful," I said. She tilted her head. "Do you think Daddy can see us from heaven?" For a moment I couldn't speak. The truth was too heavy for her world. "Maybe," I said finally, "but even if he can't, we're still here. And that's what matters." That night, back home, I opened the windows. The air smelled like rain and freedom. I sat at the kitchen table where the fake suicide note had once lain and wrote a new one, short, real, mine. To whoever finds this, I lived. And I told the truth. That's enough. When I finished, I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer. Not as a goodbye, but as proof. The next morning, I brewed coffee and watched Ava eat her cereal, sunlight spilling across the table. The world had color again. Agent Danner called to say the case was officially closed. Margaret and William had pled guilty. The money was recovered. The public had moved on to new headlines. But before he hung up, he said something that stayed with me. "Sometimes survival is the loudest justice there is." I looked out the window at the rain-soaked world and finally let myself breathe. The storm had passed, and what was left was simple, quiet, fragile, and alive. For the first time since that night at the Regal Grand, I wasn't waiting for the next blow. I was waiting for life.